helpful tool for grounding for me right now is touch. And Janet and I, the work that we've done is so necessary. It was so helpful and so necessary for me because I wouldn't have been able to function without, the ability to feel grounded and safe. And nothing else works as easily or as quickly. It's like a complete reset. I go to a session with Janet and I feel like I remember myself and I remember reality. And this is something that's helpful for everybody. It's not just people with disabilities. It can help anyone to find that part of themselves and nurture that part of themselves. And it's so important because touch is one major contributor to our happiness. And I've learned that. And it's been a long time coming. It was a long, long struggle. And here we are, and now I go to sessions and I receive touch platonically in a way that feels safe and nurturing and helpful, and it helps me navigate my disability. And again, you don't have to have a disability for it to help you. It can really help anybody who's wondering and searching for something in that area. So go see Janet. She's amazing. She does great work, and we've worked so hard together to make this a reality for me. And I'm happy to say that I can shake people's hands now, and I can give people hugs and not feel scared or obligated. I can just do it because it's something that I love and something that I want to do. And it's given me my freedom in a lot of ways, in ways that I can't describe. So, platonic touch, very, very important. Janet, an awesome practitioner. So, go see her. Thank you.
It's not the right slide.
Look at that.
There we are.
Hey!
Hey,
you like a hug? Yes. Everyone, this is Epiphany Jordan. She is the author of Somebody Hold Me, the single person's guide to nurturing human touch. And as well as Epiphany lives in Austin, Texas, where she does an immersive touch experience called Karuna Sessions. You can find her at nurturinghuman-touch.com.
And this is my excellent colleague, Miss Janet Trevino. She is located in San Antonio, Texas, and she does one-on-one platonic touch with people who are seeking platonic touch, and also people who are looking for who want touch but can't get it. You can find her online at janettrevino.com, and you can also find her on YouTube. Her YouTube channel is amazing.
Yes, please, go
and this is our presentation, A Call to Arms, Solving Loneliness via Human Touch.
And for some reason,
it keeps going to the wrong place.
All right, there we go.
All right.
Cool. So, let's get started.
Let's get started.
There you go. Oh, yep. Oh, hold on a second. I got a little distracted there. So something that we all share, if you think about it, here at South by Southwest, it's probably felt like you're running around meeting a bunch of different people and seeing all sorts of things out there. But one thing that we all share, if you look down real quick, we all share a body. Oftentimes we forget that we have this body. And believe it or not, it is not just the vehicle to carry your brain around. Especially here in this tech exhibit hall, we often think about what's going on here, but we neglect that we have this skin that is the largest organ in our body, that we can experience touch, and that our bodies truly do matter. So let's consider a few experiences that we may experience here that I'd like for you to consider. These are experiences that you resonate with, and you don't need to display or show hands if you have these, but just start making a mental list around which ones you feel like really connect with you. You don't sleep well.
I was at the wrong clicker.
You are distrustful of people. You have little to no physical contact with others. Is that some of you? You are jumpy and easily startled. You're feeling depressed, or oftentimes that's an experience you have. You feel anxious or have anxiety. You are lonely. You feel disconnected. Maybe you spend 12 hours in front of a screen most days. You don't remember the last time you experienced a good long hug. And your body is tense. Now, as you think about all of those, is that how you maybe experience your life right now? And if that's true, it's very possible that you're experiencing something that's called touch hunger. Now, it's not something that's talked about. You can Google it. You're welcome to. But it is a real experience that people have, and they often feel like something feels wrong, but they don't know what it is. And it's called touch hunger. So if you're comfortable answering or responding to the following, I do invite you to raise your hand with this one. Did you accept a hug when you walked in? That's awesome. If you did accept a hug, was this the first hug that you've received? Or is this the first nurturing touch that you've received since you've been here at South by Southwest? Okay, awesome. And if it was the first hug you've received, how about, is this the first hug you received in the last month or so? All right, okay, so we have people that are getting touch on a regular basis. That's good to know. So, good news. We really want to share here with you is that you don't need to live without touch. If you want touch in your life, it is really accessible and it has these benefits that can change people's lives. I've seen my clients that they've had happier and better lives because they've been able to learn how to do touch platonically. So I want you to listen to the end to find out solutions to accessing touch. Before then, we're going to go over the present state of loneliness and some of the what happens when we're touch deprived. So stay tuned to the end if you're able to. And Epiphany, take it away.
So, I don't know if you've been hearing about the loneliness epidemic. It's been big news lately. And what does it mean? So first, let's look at the definition of loneliness. Loneliness is the gap, the perceived gap between your actual connections and what you wish you have. So you can be alone all the time and feel perfectly content, or you could be surrounded by people and feel lonely. So it's really something that's in our minds. So who is lonely? In a recent survey, they found out that about 45% of Americans say that they feel lonely at least once a week. 1 in 5 people, 20% of people say that they feel lonely all the time and that they don't feel like they have anybody to talk to. Surprisingly, the group that is the most lonely is the 18 to 22-year-olds, followed closely by the 45 to 49-year-olds. And this is not a problem that is just happening in the United States. Great Britain a couple years ago appointed a minister of loneliness to address this problem. So what is it? What happens when you're lonely? You develop this distrust of people. You think that everybody's out to get you. You think the worst of people. I had a birthday party a couple weeks ago, and my friend Paul, who lives and works at home, came over, and before he came over, he went out to get a slice of pizza, and he was just like, the girl was horrible to me, I hate people, I'm never leaving my house again. So it kind of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where people who are lonely kind of armor up and get defensive against the world, and it just kind of keeps looping. So finally, loneliness has some negative health outcomes. They're finding that people who are lonely have lower mortality, and we're going to look at exactly what it does to your physical body in a bit. But loneliness is worse for you than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is worse for your health than obesity. So it's really not a great thing.
So let's now look at touch through a historical lens. Like, how did we get here? Well, oftentimes we think that what we're experiencing around touch is pretty typical. Like, this is normal. It's probably normal human experience. But it really is not. So if you think about it, I don't know how to, is it just the next?
The middle one.
There it is, okay. What's the middle one? So what happens is, first of all, acknowledging the obvious, but not so obvious, is that we are social creatures. Living in isolation is not natural for us. Now, back a couple hundred years ago, people would sleep in the same bed. That was seen as absolutely normal. Nowadays, you can see that even oftentimes children and adults not sleeping together. And the ways in which we needed each other for survival, to stay warm. Nowadays, honestly, that's not in this society, it's not necessary to have that body warm to survive. Oh. All right, still learning the thing. So now let's talk about the historical suppression of touch. In some ways, it was systematic. So back in the age of rationality, when things started to become more like getting into the sciences, what they did, you look at the five senses and they split them. They considered the higher senses and the lower senses. So the higher senses, which again we would use for science, is what you could see and what you could hear. And what ended up happening is that the lower sense, which is touch, taste, and smell, were marginalized. And what this has consequences socioculturally, because suddenly the cultures that would depend on their touch to learn, to sense things, for their survival, or their taste, or their smell, the people that would prioritize that type of sense were marginalized and created a division. While those, again, this is like thinking of Europe, that would use their sight and their hearing as, again, how to access intellect or intelligence, those were seen as civilized, while those who didn't have that didn't prioritize those higher senses, again, were seen as uncivilized. This is something that systematically happened, and we still see the effects today, which then what creates is racism, right? The Southern Hemisphere having this very touchy-feely and seen as uncivilized, and intellectuals, tech, seeing as this is what we prioritize. And then lastly, physical isolation. So when you look at today, how does all this played out? When children are punished, often in practices, time out, right? We isolate each other to punish each other. Then you look at schools. When a student acts out, we do in-school suspension. We isolate him or her from the rest of the students. When I'm in a fight with my friend or my partner, what do? Silent treatment. Like, we do this to each other to hurt each other. And then, of course, the biggest one of all that has irreversible mental health situations is solitary confinement. Like, this is what we do. We hurt each other around touch. And you know what? And it does. It works, because guess what? Touch is really important. Our bodies really need it. I don't know how to make it work. Okay, I'm not making it work. See, there you go.
Okay, so what is it that has brought us to this point in history? Why is it that we're feeling so lonely right now? Oops. So the first factor is singlehood. In the last census, 42% of Americans checked the single box. Not only are more of us single, we're waiting longer to get married, and we're having fewer children. How many of you here are single right now? And how many of you are completely frustrated and exhausted with dating and have like given it up altogether? Yeah, I hear you. I feel you on that one. It's hard. It's hard to meet somebody. Okay, so the next factor is our pets. We are creating more intimate relationships with our animals. I saw a statistic that blew my mind the other day. This year on Valentine's Day, Americans spent $886 million on Valentine's Day presents for their pets, okay? Last time I checked, this was a holiday that celebrates romantic relationships.
But you have 2 cats.
I do have 2 cats, but I didn't wear my cat is fucking awesome socks because they didn't match my outfit today. But, pets are wonderful. They are incredibly supportive and they are good companionship, but they are not a substitute for other human beings. Okay, more of us than ever live alone. About 27% of Americans live alone. I live alone and I happen to love it. But even if you don't live alone, in America, the size of the average house has gotten huge. In 1970, it was about 1,400 square feet. In 2009, it is 2,700 square feet. Janet, do you ever text your kids or your partner from the other room?
And my house is 1,400 and I still do it.
So yeah, I mean, even if we live with other people, we're really isolated. We're still isolated from each other. Come on. Generational stratification. For most of human history, we lived in multi-generational households where the elderly would take care of the younger people while the adults went to work. Now we send our kids to school. We put our elderly in old folks' home, and this is going to become more of a problem by the year 2050. 17% of the world's population is going to be over 65, and 1 in 4 elderly people live alone as well. Mental health. 1 in 5 of us suffers from anxiety. 20 million Americans had a major depressive episode last year, and 10 million of us had suicidal ideations. So, you know, when you're not feeling good, when you're kind of stuck in your head and you feel isolated and you don't want to go out of the house. And then finally, there's information overload. Our brains take in 34 gigabytes of information a day, and that's just in our leisure time. We spend 11 hours a day reading, watching, or listening to media, and we spend about 3 hours a day touching our cell phones. I'm sure that this is not shocking news to you here if you've been walking around and seeing people who are like sitting on their phones instead of talking to each
Epiphany,
other.
you panicked this morning when you couldn't find your phone. You lost your shit.
I did. I totally did. True confession. Okay, so click. All right, so we said that loneliness leads to higher mortality rates, but what exactly is it doing to our bodies? The first thing is inflammation. There's a lot more inflammatory diseases, and inflammation exacerbates a lot of things. The next thing is cortisol. When we're stressed out, our bodies produce a lot of cortisol. It also raises your blood pressure. And finally, it suppresses your immune system. On the other hand, human touch and the chemical that it produces, oxytocin, reduces inflammation, counteracts the effects of cortisol, lowers your blood pressure, and raises your immune system. I read a lot about loneliness, and I rarely see this applied in a very deliberate, intentional fashion as a way to solve loneliness, but it seems very obvious to us.
We went to the presentation on loneliness a couple days ago, and
They were talking about the same
they
stuff.
debated talking about touch. Like they were like, and they ended up not putting it in there as an option. It's interesting. So now the matrix of human touch. So there are 4 major ways in which we can experience human touch in our lives. And it goes foundational, therapeutic, social, and sexual. So foundational, I have 4 kids. So it's really important that I build and I give to them that healthy, loving parenting. And it's oftentimes many children don't get to have that. And as adults, I'm wondering, as you reflect on your own life, that may not have been present for you. Because on the negative side, childhood abuse or trauma is rampant. This is something that our society hasn't begun to deal with. And so when I see my clients, oftentimes they come with some level of trauma from childhood. The next one is therapeutic. Again, when we think about, I need to go get some touch, we often think, I'll just go get a massage. That is the thing that we've come to accept, but 40 years ago, that wasn't as common. So it's great for a lot of people to get touched that way. And the newer movement up here is the professional cuddling movement, so that's another way people can professionally access it. On the negative side, touch is often very clinical. And people that have had to go through medical procedures have often experienced a lot of pain. And so when they think about being touched, they think about being poked and prodded and up here and down there. And so that's uncomfortable, and they don't want anyone touching them because it actually physically begins to hurt them. The next one is social. This is the way that we can more easily access touch, right? We can go dancing, we can do sports and do martial arts. And that, for a big segment of our society, is accessible. But then on the other side, because we have depression and anxiety, these things that are happening, people are socially isolating themselves, making it difficult to access touch socially. So then they fall into what I talked about in the beginning around touch hunger. And lastly, sexual. Yay, right? Most people think, well, if I need touch, I'm going to get into a relationship. And they do hopefully it's consensual sex. That's the way that most people access it if they feel like they want to. Unfortunately, again, many people, the majority of people in our society have experienced in some way groping, sexual assault. And so that also then easily becomes something that we don't want to experience because of the negative consequence. So what don't we understand about touch, right? This is an important question. That our touch needs will change. So right now you may be thinking, I don't really want touch or hugs, whatever, and that may not be true a year from now or 5 or 10 years. So right now, today, oftentimes, we looking into the fluidity of our boundaries, like this morning, my no may mean not right now, not with you, not that way, right? Like there's different ways we would say no to somebody, but we even have a hard time saying no. But like even thinking like, what do I want? Is it, again, with this person, in this way, at this time? Looking into how we change from minute to minute and every day of our life. And that's on a daily basis. Then we look at a lifetime. I have clients who are like, when I was 20 and 30, I was not at all interested in hugs or like cuddling and not at all important to me. But when I turned 50, 60, 70, like suddenly like they can't get enough of it. And vice versa. With people that go through physical changes or like hormonal changes, maybe when they were younger, that felt really good to receive that kind of nurture from a partner. But as they turn into 50, 60, 70s, they're like, oh, please stay away. Do not touch me. And we haven't had an honest conversation about how that plays out in people's lives. If y'all want to move up a little bit, please come forward. You can move at any time. Now, bodily autonomy, this is also really important that we begin to understand, first of all, again, that this body belongs to us and that wanted touch should feel good. We've lost the idea of like feeling good and pleasure, and a lot of people have this inability to be able to experience that. And then, I don't know why I skipped. I think I skipped. So the last point on there was about touch being for wellness. Those of you who are familiar with the Maslow's pyramid of needs, you know that on the bottom it says they're like shelter, food, water, air. But oftentimes you may see on there, I've seen like sex, right? So we often forget that touch is actually an essential need. Children will die without it, like babies, infants, and that we need it throughout our entire life. It's extremely important that we see touch as important as air, breathing air, oxygen, nourishment, water. And again, our society has marginalized it so that it's not one of those priorities.
So why would we think about addressing loneliness with human touch? Let me count the ways. So the first is it's the simplest answer. It's hardwired into our biology. We started our species with touch and we raise our young with touch. And also the thing that people are lacking when they feel lonely is connection. And it is actual physical connection. So it's the simplest answer. Touch is also affective. It's effective, but affective means that it conveys emotions. You actually have cells in your skin that respond to emotion, that sense emotion. As I was preparing for this presentation, I was emailing with a friend of mine in San Francisco, and about 5 years ago, her mother died while she was in the middle of a divorce. She was devastated. She was close to her mother. And I told her, I was like, I'm going to be in town soon, and I'm happy to give you some mothering. We met at a potluck dinner. I sat on the couch. She sat next to me and leaned back on my chest. I put my arms around her, and we just talked. Every single time that we have communicated in the past 5 years, she brings up that experience. She tells me how much it meant to her, how good it made her feel, how it was just the right thing in that moment. So touch will solve your loneliness in a very, very powerful way. It's accessible. You don't need a prescription for it. They're actually right now working on a pill for loneliness, and I'm like, fuck that bullshit. Let's try something like this. It's also accessible. You can be elderly and bedridden. You can be in the hospital. You can have a broken bone. You can be in a wheelchair. You can be a triathlete, and it is available to you. It doesn't take a lot of training. It doesn't take a lot of money. A lot of wellness practices, organic food, supplements, yoga classes, special clothes and equipment. It's like, that's a barrier for a lot of people that we don't think about. And touch, all it takes is two people who are willing to share touch. If you do it peer-to-peer, it is absolutely free. It does take a little bit of education. People don't usually need to learn how to touch, but they need to figure out how to navigate and negotiate it, because most people don't know, because we're not taught how to do that. And finally, touch feels good. I take people through exercises in my book, and like 2 minutes of touch and they're going, oh my God, this feels amazing. Can we do this again? They're using words like blissful, peaceful, relaxed, calm, grounded, centered. People describe it as luxurious and decadent. So it feels good. And that's important, because a lot of wellness practices don't feel good. If you've ever been sweating through dragging through your last 15 minutes of your class at the gym, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
And we want to let you know that there will be a book signing at the bookstore, not library, the bookstore for this book if you'd like to purchase and get a signing.
Okay.
So what are the barriers to getting touch? I mean, I'm sure you're hearing this and going, wow, this is great. Like, I want to do this. Like, let's jump in and get into a cuddle call right now. But that's actually not often the case, right? There are lots of barriers to it. So oftentimes I'm like, you need more touch in your life, and people are like, who the heck am I supposed to touch? So there's a lot of questions around like friends, family, like who would I invite to do this and have this experience with us? And so figuring out like in your life who those people be. Oftentimes we think, oh, I'm the only one. But more often than not, other people in our circles probably want it as well. And the next question is, how do I do that? Like, again, because we don't have a script, we don't have the ability to learn how to do this because in our families we may not have had it. It's like, I don't know how to. So I see clients on a regular basis and they're like, I'll ask them, what kind of touch would you like to receive? They have absolutely no idea. They go, well, can you just show me? Or so like having to guide them through that process. Like, what do I want? No one's ever asked me the question, what kind of touch do I like? And or the next part would be like, well, then how do I ask for it? Like, how do I go up to someone and say, like, can I touch you? Like, then that's like creepy, and don't do that.
Janet, would you like me to hold your hand?
Yeah, like finding ways where it cannot feel so creepy. Like, people already have this anxiety around it, so like asking is like, well, can I cuddle you? Like, it's just weird, right? So there's a lot of anxiety around asking. Okay. The next thing is like, what are the rules of engagement? So what happens is, especially with men, but with all of us, we have sexualized touch. If I'm going to touch someone, if I go up and I just touch Epiphany's arm here, we're
going to bed, for sure.
it's sexual, like, oh my gosh, this person wants something with me, or they want to, it's sexual. We don't have a lot of touch lexicon around, like, what's Platonic and what does it mean? And so because we've sexualized touch, we don't touch. It's not safe to touch. We just stay away from one another. And then that makes it really difficult for men to get vulnerable and to ask maybe their other guy friends, like, hey, can you hug me? Can you get some touch, because I'm really feeling anxious. My ex-husband, he went through a full-down panic attack, and the EMS arrived, and they were trying to figure out what happened to him. And the EMS person, all she did was put her hand on his arm, and his heart rate went down immediately. And he's like, this whole time he thought like he was dying, of course, but like it was just that I needed just a human touch. So then oftentimes again, like with him, he's like, something must be wrong with me. Like, I'm the only person that needs this. Why am I having the full-on panic attack? And was really struggling with, this is a problem that I have. It's personal. And then what happens next is if something's wrong with me, shame comes in. And shame isolates us even more and makes us impossible to connect and to tell somebody, like, I just think I need more touch in my life. And again, that exacerbates the problem even more. So then, again, the solution we've come up with, cleverly in our society is, if I just find the right boyfriend, the right girlfriend, a husband, wife, I can just find the right person that will want to be with me and they have to touch me. Like, it's really kind of a silly thing, because oftentimes relationships fail in this regard. Many of my clients are men. and many of them are married. And that's really scary for me to say, because I don't want the wives to like feel threatened by me. At the same time, these guys are like, I can't get it from my spouse. It's not there for me. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to ask. I don't know how to be like creepy. Maybe I should say it's sexual. I don't want to do that. Like, I need these skills. Please help me with them. And lastly, if this wasn't difficult, and I'm pressing all the buttons, seriously, y'all. Please. Okay, maybe you can help me with that while I talk. If this wasn't difficult, there's sexual assault, right? Like, there's people touching inappropriately. It's unwanted touch. Like, that happens so often. And if it hasn't happened yet, then we're scared. So like, let's say a friend, you ask your friend, hey, would you like hold me? Maybe we can sit on the couch and you like cuddle with me or whatever. We're like, wait a second, I don't want to do that, because what if they do try to come onto me? Like, I'm afraid, like, I really want it. Even if it's never happened to me, we have this internal story that it may happen to us. Keep us even further away from it. Our fear and trauma have a big part in contributing to this problem.
So how can we respect people's boundaries and have a touch-rich culture at the same time? It seems like a conundrum, right?
I got this next one.
Yeah, hang on.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Yes. So, different meaning for different people. What does that mean? What does touch mean to you? We don't ask this question about most things about ourselves. If I say to Epiphany, I really need you to put your arm around me in this moment. I'm feeling really tense. What does it mean? It means I need care. Maybe I need to be seen. I need to be heard or wanted, or like getting clear about what does it mean is an important part of when I negotiate touch with somebody, getting like, okay, I just need right now for someone to matter to somebody, and having them put their arm around me would feel like I matter to them.
Okay, we need to center the conversation around touch on consent. It's got to be bottom line. Because we live in a culture where we don't have like a single thing, you know, like in some societies or some countries, it's like, yeah, everybody has the same idea around touch, but we don't have that here. Touch, putting your hands on another people is a very powerful responsibility. It's huge, and you just have to ask. And paradoxically, it's like, you know, people go, oh, if I ask, that's boring, it's unromantic. But if you do ask, then you're more likely to get it, and you're more likely to get it from people you want. A lot of the unwanted touch that we have comes from people who not only are not asking, but there's a power differential. So the people who don't want the touch are not really allowed to say no. You can't get the touch unless you risk rejection. I mean, there's just no way around that. And you have to make yourself vulnerable and put yourself out there, but the reward for it is great.
So the next thing is about like how to negotiate this kind of stuff. Oftentimes we're really scared. We're like, if I ask the question, you know, what's going to happen? So I invite you to get out of your comfort zone. Ask for it. Brave rejection. Take a rejection class. Maybe I'm sure there's something here in Austin somewhere. Like, learn how to handle that. I play a game with my kids called Will You, May I? So I'll have my child sit in front of me, and actually this works for any age, any relationship, maybe with your grandma. Like, you can do this with anybody. And we'll go, you have the option of saying, will you or may I? So I'll go to my child and say, will you give me a kiss on the cheek? And they'll be like, yes, mommy, and they'll give me a kiss on the cheek. And then they'll ask me, may I punch you in the gut? You know, like, no, you know, but you could like poke my gut, you know, like, so like we start asking these questions where children and adults can both learn to say yes, say no, you know, hear the rejection. It's not really rejection, but it's really taking care of oneself, right? And playing with this in all your relationships.
So we need to offer people a variety of options. If you went to the doctor and they said, you need to get more exercise in your life, you could be like, oh, I could join a gym, I could get a personal trainer, I could do YouTube videos in my living room, I could go for a walk every day, I could do some exercises over here like this guy. So, you know, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all thing for, you know, you can say people need to get touch, but you have to give them different ways to get it.
So lastly, touch, again, we've been saying this a couple times, we're going to say it again. Touch, wanted touch should feel good. It's okay. For some people, we need to give them permission to experience pleasure, to experience good feelings in their body, especially if their body hasn't given them that experience. And then when we meet somebody who's like, I just really want someone to touch me, we don't shame them, make fun of them for having this very extremely important human need.
And finally, we need to think about making touch social, because we only get our touch needs met with sex, and we equate sex with touch. And there's so many of us single, that leaves a lot of us out of the equation. When I do my Karuna sessions, we always do it with 2 practitioners and 1 client, because it changes the social dynamic. The client doesn't think that there's something romantic or sexual going on. Instead, they feel like a king or a queen that's being waited on by these 2 people. And so if we start sharing touch in group situations, then it takes on a different meaning. You see kids doing it all the time. You also see primates doing it. Primates spend about 20% of their time doing social grooming. And originally they thought it was just for removing parasites, but it's not. It is also to foster sharing and cooperation. And I think those are 2 things that we need.
And I have a dream. I think we need new ways of doing this. New consensual, innovative, we're innovative here at South by, innovative ways of doing it. So I think there are people that are ready right now to begin wellness programs, either corporate or in your organization and wherever it can be, like maybe you have a community group. There are ways that this can happen, and that we would definitely be interested in supporting you and giving you that kind of information so that you could create your own programs where it works for you.
Okay, so let's look at some different ways that we can solve loneliness with human touch, and I'm going to give you all some ideas that you can use it right away in your life. So the first is touch for the immobile or homebound. The next time you go see somebody in the hospital, or if you go see an elderly relative, it doesn't need to be much touch. You can just lightly touch their face or their hands, but especially if they're getting some sort of medical treatment where they're getting poked and prodded a lot, that's going to feel really good, and it's going to make their experience of seeing you much more meaningful. Then there's one-on-one cuddling. If next time you're feeling low and you're considering like going out and spending $200 on a handbag or a new pair of shoes, book an appointment with a professional cuddler. I mean, it's an amazing experience, and it also
it's not that
teaches
expensive.
It's not that expensive.
It's $80.
It's $80. But it kind of shows you the ropes, and it's an hour where it gets to be all about you. You can also do this with a friend if you don't want it to feel sexual. It's like, go to the park and spread out a blanket, or sit on a couch in a cafe or something, so that it's in a public place and you're not really alone and being romantic together. Touch via social grooming. We have largely outsourced our grooming needs. We've turned it into a transactional thing where we pay somebody to cut our hair or do our nails. Either that, or it becomes a thing that we do every morning by ourselves, and it's tedious. Invite your friends over, have a mani-pedi night, brush and comb each other's hair. I used to shave my ex-boyfriend's face for him, and he just loved it because he didn't have to do it himself, and it's a form of caregiving. Touch between peers. This would be like if you're in a support group or something and you need to speak, ask somebody else in the group to come and sit behind you or stand behind you and put their hands on your shoulders so that you feel supported. You feel like somebody literally has your back when you are talking about something difficult. Touch a la carte. Go out and hold out a free hugs sign and give a touch to strangers. Actually, I'll tell you, yesterday I was walking around with a shirt that said, "Ask me for a hug." The only person who asked me for a hug was the ACLU dude who wanted some money. So maybe you'll have better luck with it than I did, but it's very different. Like, I come out of Burning Man culture, and it's like everybody greets everybody with a hug there, and here not so much. And then touch therapy for the traumatized. Do not try this at home. This is Janet's specialty. She provides touch to people who want touch but have some sort of physical or emotional thing where they can't get it. And finally, The most underutilized thing, damn it, is touch between friends. This is actually what I wrote the book about. A lot of us consider our friends to be our family, our support network. We already have intimate relationships with them. We love them, we trust them, and yet we don't really touch our friends. So it's a great thing to do. It's just a matter, we don't have social scripts for how to do it, but if you learn how to do it and take a risk, it is possible. And then there is one more way to get your touch needs met, which is at South by Southwest.
Here. All right, so we need a volunteer. Who would like to come up and
from the
come and
audience?
sit right here?
Who's willing?
Yeah, just come on up. Yep. And let me tell you what we're going to do to you. No, we're only going to touch your face and your hands.
Touch your hands and your face.
Yeah, that's it.
Actually, why don't we put the chair?
Cool. Or do you want her to come up?
Yeah.
Right,
Why
come
don't
on
you
up
on the stage?
Grab my, you can grab mine.
So would it be okay if we touched your face and your hands? Okay. You're welcome to close your eyes. So, as you can see, we're not massaging her in any way. We're just giving her very light touch. And while your lover might touch you like this, it's kind of more reminiscent of like what your mother might have done when you were not feeling well or when she was putting you to bed at night.
It can be very simple. It's often what we confuse. We think touch is complicated. It's not.
Yeah, you don't have to do a lot. I mean, you can hold your hands still.
Let's solve the question.
Oh, did that feel sexual in any way? Haha!
So touch doesn't have to be sexual.
Thank you so much.
All right, so now we're going to have an opportunity. You all will get a chance to do this a little bit in your own way. Raise your hand if you would like to partner up with somebody and give and receive touch.
All you're going to do is touch another person's
And it's
hand.
only hands. Right, so find the person that has their hand up and go sit next to them. Keep your hand raised until you get a partner. They will come to you, or you'll go to them, I guess. Find someone. Those of you who are choosing not to participate, no worries. Find the nearest couple that's actually participating in this activity, and I want you to watch their body language. I want you to watch maybe their breathing. If you feel a little shy, who here is feeling shy to raise their hand? It's okay. Alright, so I want you to see if you can be paying attention, because this is really important how the body actually can shift and change based on touch. Okay. So those of you who are in partners, first thing I want you to do is to get into your body. So maybe you'll close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take a deep breath. As you exhale, really feel your body feeling a little bit heavier, grounded. Maybe if you have your eyes open, look at your hands real quick and just kind of see what is it that's about to get experienced. Bring blood to that part of the body that's going to be opened up and receptive to receiving the touch. Just really finding yourself in this moment. Now, indicate which of you will be the receiver. So if you're the receiver, I guess, indicate, raise your hand. All right, once you've identified the receiver, extend your hand to the giver in front of you. Now, givers, your job is to only do what could be what we were doing, just light touch on our hand for 1 minute. Receivers, I invite you to either close your eyes or soften your gaze, whatever feels good to you, and start. So you'll have 1 minute. Now, givers, if you find yourself moving kind of quickly, slow down your touch, right? See if you can experience the different ridges, sensations that are in the hand. If you're finding yourself a little anxious, like you don't want to move, do one finger. It is so powerful to just touch with one finger and just notice. If you have your eyes closed, I invite you to maybe open them and see what it's like to actually look. If you have your eyes open, I invite you maybe to close your eyes, to have a different type of experience. Just really be in that touch. imagine like this is the first hand you've ever touched in your entire life. And for some of you, it may actually be that way, that you've actually never taken a hand and looked at it or touched it with this kind of intention and attention. It's very powerful. All right, the minute is up. We invite you to switch. First, actually, we invite you to thank your partner for allowing you to touch their hand. And then switch. And we'll get started. You have a minute as well. Yeah, those two of you who are giving touch, I invite you to either soften your gaze or close your eyes. And the receiver as well, if you haven't closed your eyes, maybe it's a time for you to try closing your eyes. Vice versa. Just try a different experience. And the reminder again is to touch with focus, with attention and intention that nurture love. If you have your eyes closed, maybe open them. If you have them open, maybe it's closing them. These kinds of things I do with my clients, and it changes how they experience their bodies. Your minute is up. If it felt too short, that's kind of deliberate. Continue that. Find somebody to do that with later on South by Southwest. Thank your partner, of course, for doing the exercise, especially if they're a stranger. That's amazing that you're able to do that.
And, you can think about how it made you feel. I mean, did it feel good? Did it feel awkward? Did it feel alien? Like, oh my God, what am I doing? Were you concerned about whether the other person was enjoying it or not? Were you able to focus on your own experience? Maybe you just didn't know. That you're like, oh, this feels really good. Maybe it made you like slow down and relax a little bit, and just get out of your head.
I'll like to share that with my clients. We'll do this. It's called the hand caress, and you do it for 3 minutes, right, with each other. And then you can transition to your face. You can do this with a partner or a friend. You can do the face caress, and then you can do a feet caress. And if you have a more intimate connection, you can do it back. I mean, and the best thing about this is that it's timed. I love timers because you know it's going to end. I think it's always scary. Like someone says, "Hey, give me a back massage." And you're like, "Yeah, but when is this going to end?" Right? Like, I'm going to be here forever, and you feel bad telling somebody, "I'm done." There's that feeling, or like they can't. It's just a difficult range. So if you set a timer, lots of touch with timers really just changes everything. Yeah.
So that actually concludes our portion of it. We are happy to ask you questions.
All right, ask us questions.
Yeah. Well, we've been asking you questions. We're happy to answer your questions, and then as soon as I'm done, I'm going to be doing a book signing up in the store if you're interested in learning how to get your touch needs met with in your existing relationships and your friendships.
Please come to the mic. The mic is right there. We would love to have answer any of your questions, or I'll just talk about all my stories. Or maybe you don't want to come to the mic. Somebody just want to let out a question.
They have no questions for us.
Do any of our friends that are in the audience you want to ask a question you think somebody else might be asking? We may have one.
Yes, my name is Carlos. Is there ever a time when you're doing your work in your sessions that during the touch time, someone, a client I guess, does get aroused? Doesn't mean to, but it does happen?
Yes, I can talk to that one for sure. So arousal is one of the things that keeps people from accessing touch. They're really scared, because especially if I'm saying we're gonna have a platonic session, they're like, well, I don't want to be set up, right? Like I don't want to fail here. I don't want to have guilt or shame because my body may respond and I didn't mean it to. And that is, again, it's a question I get often, a lot of shame around showing up sexually when you didn't mean to. So I often tell them, like, guess what? Like arousal and erection, that's your body's healthy. Like it's good. Yay, good for you. Like if I have clients that can't get them and they wish they were you. So like first, just normalizing it as part of the human experience. And then I tell them, did you know that if you just stay still, we can do some breathing, that you will probably, it'll go away. Of course, and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, duh. Like, see, like, so let's just let the body expand and contract and do what it's gonna do, and let's stay connected and continuing to move you into thinking about the rest of your body and not just that one isolated spot.
We had a client the other day who was like, he's like, I kept trying to think about getting into a sexual place, but it just felt so maternal that I couldn't do it. We were like, we're doing it right. So that was good. Yes, ma'am.
Do you address working with kids and how to do, because I work with high school youth but a lot of times they need a hug or whatever, and the appropriate way to do that.
So I'm actually, I think that kind of falls under the peer-to-peer, because there is that power differential. Like, I would love to be teaching, doing a cuddle party or taking people through my protocol, teenagers through my protocol, and having them run it and do it so that they're touching each other, and then they don't have to worry about the, weirdness of, this person has more power over me.
I can't say that I work with kids. I have, sometimes teenagers will come to my cuddle parties because they recognize that they need this. But it is complicated because of authority dynamics, and like, I'm sure schools have their rules around touch and how it's inappropriate, and all the hormones. So yeah, I don't work with children. Side hug, yeah.
Thanks for sharing your knowledge around touch. Can you guys hear me? All right. So my question is, you've been talking a lot about one-on-one touch, and you mentioned Cuddle Party. Can you talk to us more about group touch and what is available for folks who maybe aren't ready for a one-on-one session, but they might be okay with a group kind of event? Thanks.
So there is cuddleparty.com. You can go and find a cuddle party near you. I do 2 of them a month most times in San Antonio, Texas. I know you've done group events as well. And I think that for some people, oftentimes people are scared of the group. I hear more like, oh, I don't want to do group, anxiety. But for others, I try to explain to them that the second rule of cuddle party is that you never have to cuddle anyone at a cuddle party. I think oftentimes they think, well, do I have to touch people? Do I have to accept their touch? And it's like, well, no. You can sit there and watch. You can be a part of the immersive experience without having to engage. You get to decide what happens to your body. And then what's also been pretty phenomenal, the last cuddle party that I had a few days ago, there were a lot of men, and it's always awkward. You're like, because I don't know their orientation, and probably most of them are hetero. So this time what we did changed everything, is we did karate chopping. And I don't know, it's been such a long time that like people actually do karate chopping. So we all sat in a circle and we did this like karate chop thing, and the guys were like, yeah, I can do karate. Like, they felt like they could really touch each other without touching each other, and eventually their hands got tired. They're like, okay, well, can I just rub your back? And then move into like massage, and it wasn't weird for guys to be massaging other guys. And then eventually I was like, well, can you do like this? And they were talking to each other. It was all in a circle, so we're all doing it to each other. And then by the end of the night, I've never seen this before, they were actually cuddling. I was like, what happened? Like, because it's so difficult and awkward. And they were like, hey, let's talk. I think there was an intimacy that I've never seen before. So it's how to create those transitions where people are like, I don't do any touch, or touch is weird. And we're finding kind of for ways to do that effectively.
And also, like with the book, I like specifically created this protocol so that you do it with a group of friends, you do it with at least 4 people. So it's already people you know, but you progressively get physically closer. Like, first you touch hands, then feet, then face, and then we do more group touch, and then it goes to the one-on-one touch, but it's still done in a group setting, so it doesn't feel romantic. So it's very, very structured and set up so that people have the opportunity to opt out when they need to. And it's a good way to do it, because touching your friends can be awkward. We don't have social scripts about how to touch our friends, and so a lot of us are just suffering alone.
Right, we spend more time touching our tech,
our devices,
right? Our devices, our tech, and we often have our hands occupied touching a machine, that we're like, we forget to touch each other. I really want to invite you all to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're interested in this topic. I'm going to be going into more like cultural things, race, how this is an intersectional issue. This isn't just about like giving somebody a hug. Like there's a lot of different parts of how this all works. My colleague Denise over here and I were starting a podcast called Touch is Medicine. It's actually, we have episodes done, we literally have to upload it. But Denise is an academic and she does research on communication and looking at the touch research that exists and the lack of touch research, which is really very interesting, and how then as a practitioner trying to make touch accessible and smart, because touch, going back to what I said originally, it's been marginalized as being uncivilized, not intellectual, but our bodies communicate to us constantly, giving us information that we don't listen to or respect, and that there is an intellect and an intelligence here that I think we need to bring out to the forefront.
Any other questions?
Any other thing? Give us a 1 thumb or 2 thumbs up. What do you all think? Was it 1, 2?
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
And if you like more hugs, we're gonna have you come to us. We'll be down here. Please come and talk to us one-on-one. If you want hugs, if you want some love, if you have a specific request like, I don't know, nose rub or whatever, just come up to us and we would